Hello, everyone. We'll be taking a look at Ukraine, Israel, and other conflicts of interest. As of this recording, it is October 25th, 2023. So, taking a first look over here in the Avdiivka direction, across Nahorivka to be exact, we can see Russian forces have, since yesterday and today, pushed Ukrainians a bit back, closer near the Avdiivka city. And looking over here as well, near Vodiane, we can see that Russian lines have further pushed down this roadway over here. And interestingly enough, this doesn't seem to go completely in Russia's favor in terms of territorial gains, as Russian forces seem to be pushed back at least a little bit closer to the original, 2014 line. So it's interesting to see, especially as we've taken a look at some of the footage and what's been coming out of this area as of lately. Just a lot of Russian assaults and especially, Russian equipment losses due to the continued offensive in this area. So it's interesting to see that, of course, in their offensive, Russia has made gains of their own, but also the Ukrainians have also been uh, pushing Russians back a little bit. And one last update near Hromova over here in northern Bakhmut, it appears to be that uh, uh, Ukrainian forces have been pushed back at least a little bit in what seems to be this forested area in the northern part of the city. So just taking a quick glance here over at the combat that's been going on as reported by the live UA map, and I mean you're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing. Apparently very little shelling being reported and no combat engagements. Obviously, I don't believe that for a second that the front line could be so quiet for a day. So what I'm assuming is that, the information that we know from, of course, the Kharkiv offensive that happened previously, that uh, Ukraine is really a proponent of surprise and deception in terms of how this conflict has been going. So what I'm assuming is that they're trying to report as little as possible right now, especially with what's been going on, as we talked about a few days ago, what happened across the Dnieper River of the landing by Ukrainian forces. So perhaps that has something to do with it, although I've been hearing a few rumors here and there regarding it, but I don't have any solid evidence as to what's been going on over there, so I'm not really going to report anything that I'm not certain is fact. And one more thing, going back to the deep state map that I want to talk about, I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, is that if we look at Russian forces in this area, so as we can see, 114th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade and Rifle Battalion, 277th. So it's just interesting to see like what kind of units they're throwing out here, which do seem to be Russia proper units. But take a look at down here in Avdiivka, Storm Z units, and as we know, Shoigu Storm Z are it's a penal unit. So it seems that you know, for lack of a better term, throwing men into the meat grinder. They're taking a play out of Wagner's book, is what it looks like. So, and over here, Somalia Battalion, as we know, that is a DNR unit, which, from what I've heard, are not always the most well equipped or well trained units, but that's just, DNR units as a whole, as from what I've heard. So, it's just interesting to see that Avdiivka very well may be another Bakhmut in terms of what Russia is trying to do. They're trying to get, as we talked about, another political win, just like how Bakhmut was. But from what it seems is that it's very likely going to go poorly in their favor if they just keep throwing men and equipment at the problem, like they did last year and earlier this year in Bakhmut. Now, one thing that really caught my eye, this is ISW talking about Russian offensive as of October 24th. So one thing they're reporting is that the Russian authorities are intensifying mobilization targeting Central Asian migrant communities in Russia. So, as we talked about yesterday, Russia is trying to recruit women into the war. So, them also trying to target other, like, migrant communities in Russia, perhaps those who they could capitalize in terms of uh, uh, taking away their passports or manipulating them into serving in the Russian military. It's just further highlighting the fact that Russia is having a manpower issue. So, a lot of people talk about in terms of the war, Ukraine, obviously smaller country, smaller population. Russia, bigger country, bigger population, so they just have a bigger manpower pool to source their war for. Um, but on the contrast, as we can see, they're seemingly having trouble trying to get people to serve in their military, at least consistently, that that aren't expendable like the Storm Z units as we just saw. So it's just interesting to see how an argument like that, in terms of, Russia has a bigger, uh, you know, like I said, population, GDP, just resources to capitalize upon, and yet, they're still seemingly struggling with manpower. So, one last thing about Oryx here is that take the information from Oryx with a grain of salt, due to, of course, the nature of the reporting, since they use only visually confirmed losses, and the total is likely higher since, as we know, there are likely more losses that are not visually confirmed through, video and photo evidence. And also because Oryx is not updated as consistently as it was previously, as we talked about yesterday. So it's possible that these numbers are not as accurate, so keep that in mind when we take a look at these. So first of all, uh, last we talked about Ukraine, they're at 4,626, and here they're at 4,651. And looking at Russia, last time we talked about them, 12,772, and here 12,819. So it does appear, as we talked about before, that Russia is still experiencing a higher equipment loss than Ukraine. So in terms of footage for Ukraine, nothing else really caught my eye that I felt comfortable sharing, other than this clip that I'm sure that um, you've probably seen. It's a little older. It's from like a day ago. So it's just a Russian flag that was planted here at, actually, from where we saw, it was that big, I suppose it's a waste heap in Krasnohorivka, where they planted this flag, and Russia decides to use an FPV drone to eliminate it, which I suppose was pretty popular going on yesterday, so I just thought I'd share it. So pivoting over here to Israel Palestine, just taking a quick look over here. Of course, the usual bombings across the Gaza Strip, and Israel designating 1,000 meters of border fence with Gaza as a combat zone, which is interesting to see. Um, I suppose one missile being launched by Hamas, and West Bank being a bit more calm, like we saw yesterday, and the usual going on with Hezbollah bombings of the southern area of Lebanon. So a bit less in terms of what seems to be going on as of lately, but what we've been talking about in terms of Israel Palestine is not necessarily the conflict here, but more so the broader scope of how this is going to affect Iran and the United States and their relationship, and what Iran is saying, and Iran-backed groups targeting American bases across the Middle East, and the outcomes of those targetings and what that's going to become in the future. So one last story here about Israel-Palestine for today. Israel agrees to U.S. request to delay invasion. So as we have talked about and as we've known, Israel threatening to invade the Gaza Strip a good few days ago, if not a week or two ago, um, to completely level Hamas and deal with them once and for all, but seemingly agreeing to the United States, since the United States wants to reportedly deploy missile defense systems, protect U.S. troops, and work to free hostages, and most worryingly, prepare for a possible wider regional war, which um, I personally would not want to see in this region. So, or really anywhere for that matter. So that was just a little bit worrying to see. And U.S., UK, Russia calling for a pause for humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. So it's just it's just an unfortunate situation here, but as to how it'll turn out, we'll just have to see. Now, in terms of footage that's going on out here, nothing else that I really thought should be shared, other than, of course, you know, even though there is less being reported, doesn't mean that there aren't still bombings happening across the Gaza Strip, as we can see. This was reported just not too long ago. So yeah, it's still pretty heated, definitely in the Gaza Strip. So uh, just because there are less offensive actions by either side doesn't mean that, there there isn't still something going on. So stepping outside of Ukraine, Israel out here, the Malian junta and Wagner allies cannot backfill withdrawing UN forces in northern Mali and likely creates gaps for Al-Qaeda affiliated militants to exploit. So as we know, Wagner having, severely declined and essentially being pushed out of Ukraine after the passing of Prigozhin, yet still maintaining a presence in Mali. It's just interesting to see how that affects this region and how, what is going to happen to Wagner now and how is Wagner continuing? This group that seemingly had so much power under one person, taking uh, control in quotations of multiple populated Russian cities, and Prigozhin essentially trying to stage a coup in Russia. So how is this really going to play out in terms of other countries who are associated with this organization? And just the in terms of the Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and just the whole Sahel region at large, and how these conflicts that seemingly are far away are somewhat related in one way or another. Alright, so as I was recording this, there was another map update. So as we can see near Krasnohorivka, if we look back to where we just saw, and today, Russian forces have advanced closer to this roadway out here. If we take a look here near Ulyanka, we can see that Russian forces have pushed Ukrainians a bit back out here. So if we just look backwards, it looks to be in the Kharkiv direction. So, a bit of a broad line, and just what seems to be just some map clarifications out here. But as we talked about, map clarifications, what does that fully mean in terms of, what do these map clarifications fully amount to? And, as to why they're being clarified now, are these the amounting of certain Ukrainian um, offensives or Russian offensives that after weeks or days finally just amounted just to this, or perhaps repositioning for whatever reason of either forces. So as we can see, seemingly the front line being extended slightly, and over here near Verbova, a bit of a, yeah, as we can see, just some more map clarification of just the front line moving just a little bit. Other than that, that's all I really wanted to talk about for today. If you have any questions or any other conflicts, of course, you want me to take a look at, just leave a comment and I'll cover it in a future video and I'll just take a closer look at it. But other than that, thanks for watching.